It wasn't a summit. It was a trap dressed in silk and diplomacy. The Geneva Conference Hall gleamed like a palace of peace. Marble walls, golden chandeliers, glass pitchers sweating beside expensive microphones. But the air, it buzzed with a charge. No lighting could dim. World leaders sat in a perfect circle, their flags posted proudly behind them like knights at a round table. If knights wore suits and spoke through translators, and at the heart of this circle sat two men, one Senator J.D. Vance. Sharp suit, sharp jaw, sharp tongue, every inch the old world. Across from him, Captain Ibrahim Trayoré, younger, quieter, dressed in a military jacket with no medals, just the weight of a continent stitched into every fiber. He didn't wear a tie. He didn't smile. And he didn't flinch. Cameras were rolling. Microphones were live. The world was watching. Vance leaned forward first. Voice smooth. Eyes locked like a hawk. This world has rules. Captain Trayoré, he said. Institutions, protocol, power, and you don't seem to understand any of them. The room shifted. Some diplomats looked down. Others leaned in. Like a spark had just hit dry grass. You want to nationalize your resources. Kick out our companies. Shut the door on oversight. Vance continued. Now louder. You don't belong in this world order. Trayoré sat still. The silence around him thickened like a drum about to drop. And then he leaned in. Just a little. Then I'll break it. The words landed like a thunderclap. A translator hesitated, triple-checking her headset, as if unsure she'd heard correctly. But she had. The meaning was clear. I.J.D. Vance chuckled, but there was no joy behind it. Is that a threat? No. Trayoré's voice was low. Calm. That's a diagnosis. Time seemed to freeze. And in that moment, the mood of the summit shifted entirely. This was no longer about policy. This was a confrontation between eras, the past, and something rising. To the Western diplomats in the room, he looked like a rebel. To the oppressed, watching from afar, he looked like a warrior. But to the world, he looked like a man drawing a line in the marble floor of Geneva and daring the powerful to cross it. The moment the word diagnosis left Trayoré's lips, something cracked in the room. It was small, invisible, but you could feel it. Like a shift in air pressure before a storm. J.D. Vance sat back in his chair, jaw tight, eyes narrowing not in confusion, but calculation. He'd come prepared for a debate. What he got was defiance in uniform. Still, he wasn't done. Vance leaned back in again, tapping the microphone like it was a gavel. So let me get this straight, he said, voice loaded with mock calm. You're suggesting we built a system only for ourselves. Trayoré didn't answer. Silence. He didn't blink, didn't move. And that's what made it louder than any speech. Because in that silence, Vance heard something worse than anger conviction. You know, Vance said, chuckling dryly, this world works because people play their part. Your country. Captain, I was doing just fine until you decided to tear up the script. That's when Trayoré moved. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't pound the table. He just looked up. And for the first time, locked eyes with Vance. It was the look of a man who had buried friends, who had walked through collapsed school buildings and villages stripped bare by foreign contractors, A man who didn't come to win applause. He came because he was done watching his people lose. Senator, Trayoré said, quiet as a prayer. You speak of scripts. But we weren't given pens. Only rolls. The entire room held its breath. Cameras zoomed in. Translators froze mid-sentence. Someone near the back whispered, "My God," but Vance, he smirked. And in that smirk was the entire system. "You want to talk roles," he snapped. "How about the role of keeping peace, of following agreements? You want to nationalize your mines, shut out our consultants. You're walking away from the very structure that feeds your country." Trayoré nodded once. "No," he replied. "I'm walking away from the table, where we only get crumbs." The words exploded online. Honneur. In every language. What had begun as a routine summit was no longer a conversation. It was a collision. The Western press labeled it a meltdown. The African press called it a reckoning. And somewhere, in the silence after the shouting, the world began to understand. This wasn't just a disagreement. It was a man refusing to sit quietly in a system that demanded his silence. The cameras shut off. The applause faded. The summit officially ended. But the real war, it was just getting started, 3 floors underground. Beneath the marble and microphones of Geneva, behind 2 layers of security and 1 soundproof door, 5 Western leaders gathered in a dim, private chamber. There were no cameras now. No decorum. Just fury. At the center of it all, Senator J.D. Vance, pacing like a caged wolf. He didn't blink. Vance growled, tossing his tie onto the table. He told the entire world he's ready to dismantle the system we built in front of cameras, in front of allies. The Canadian Prime Minister rubbed his temples. Maybe he's bluffing. Vance spun. Trayoré doesn't bluff. He moves like a soldier, but thinks like a revolutionary. That's dangerous. A European trade minister slid a folder across the table. Inside satellite images. A new port under construction in southern Burkina Faso. Chinese contractors on the ground. An oil pipeline under negotiation with Russia. And the French already kicked out of the country. The German envoy whispered what no one else wanted to say. He's replacing us, piece by piece. Vance slammed his hand down. No. He's replacing the order. And if he succeeds, others will follow. Mali. Niger. Maybe even some of our allies. The room fell dead silent. Then the British Foreign Secretary cleared her throat. So, what's the plan? Vance didn't hesitate. We box him in. Economically. Diplomatically. Psychologically. We isolate him. Paint him as a rogue. Push him into a corner. And when he reacts, a voice murmured, he will. We call it aggression. And we respond. The blueprint wasn't new. But this time, it had a name. Trayoré. Meanwhile, across the city, in a modest, windowless hotel room, Captain Ibrahim Trayoré sat alone at a desk, surrounded by open folders, maps, and press clippings. No staff, no luxury, no sleep, just preparation. He wasn't reacting. He was calculating. He stood in front of a mirror, not for vanity, but for discipline. His jacket bore no medals, just the green and gold emblem of his nation. Every stitch, every crease intentional, not to impress them, but to remind them, I'm not here to ask. I'm here to lead. Behind him, his top aide, former intelligence officer Dio, entered quietly. They've started, he said, holding a tablet. Headlines. Smears. Leaks. Trayoré didn't flinch. They'll overplay their hand, he said, and when they do, we don't respond. He turned to face Dio, eyes sharp. Voice low, we shift the ground beneath them. 1 week later, the War of Whispers went public, under bright studio lights. It wasn't a battlefield. It was something bigger. CNN's Global Future Forum. Live across 4 continents. The studio was cold, polished, and drenched in red, white, and blue. It looked like neutrality, but everyone knew the truth. This wasn't a debate. It was a test of power, of vision, of who really owns the future. Senator J.D. Vance stepped out first, tailored, poised, rehearsed. He wasn't here to argue. He was here to control the story. Then came President Ibrahim Trayoré. No script, no smile, just clarity. His jacket was the same forest green. His eyes focused like a sniper. The moderator welcomed them both. Voice steady. Smile strained. Tonight, we discuss global order, sovereignty, and whether the world is ready to change. She turned to Vance. Senator, is President Trayoré's push for a new multipolar world dangerous? Vance didn't hesitate. Dangerous, he scoffed. It's reckless. The current world order, flawed as it may be, keeps peace. Enable progress. We don't just smash it because someone's impatient. Then he turned, casually, to Trayoré. You want to talk revolution? That's easy when someone else cleaned up the last mess. Low murmurs rippled through the audience. Trayoré didn't blink. He leaned in. Senator, he said calmly, your world order exists because others bled for it. You speak of progress, but who's the minerals under our soil built your phones? The debts you enforce chain our schools. Your wars create our orphans. Then, with deadly stillness, he added, I'm not here to smash your system. I'm here to show it was never built for us in the first place. Silence. Not the kind that invites awkwardness, the kind that demands reflection. Vance tried to laugh it off. You're preaching now. Leadership isn't rage, it's responsibility. No. Trayoré shot back. You mean compliance? Responsibility is making sure my people don't die of thirst while your corporations pump oil from under their feet. The moderator scrambled. Let's keep this civil. It is civil. Trayoré said, steady as stone. This is what diplomacy sounds like when it's finally honest. Every camera captured it. Social media ignited. This wasn't a policy discussion. It was a tectonic shift. And right then, right there, the audience felt it. J.D. Vance came to defend a system. Ibrahim Trayoré came to dismantle its illusion. By now, the air inside the studio felt electric. Senator Vance sat forward in his chair, tightening his jaw. His team had spent 48 hours combing through intelligence briefs, diplomatic leaks, and strategy memos. They had a weapon, and he was ready to fire it. I want transparency, he said smoothly, his voice now lower, more precise. The American people deserve to know how much of your so-called independence is bankrolled by Beijing. He paused. Let the accusation linger, like poison in the air. A Chinese-built port. A Russian oil deal. That's not sovereignty. Mr. President, That's substitution. He leaned back, sure of the moment like a chess player, about to call checkmate. But Trayoré only nodded. Slowly, almost like he was grateful. Thank you, Senator, he said, voice calm. You've just made my point for me. The moderator blinked. Vance furrowed his brow. You assume that because a road is Chinese, we've been bought. Trayoré continue. Asterisk, asterisk. But when your corporations extracted gold, uranium, and oil from our land for decades, and we were still called independent. Curious math. The audience murmured. A few people leaned forward, stunned. Then Trayoré pulled a folded sheet of paper from his inside jacket pocket. I asked for permission to show something. The moderator hesitated, then nodded. He held it up. This is a list of American companies currently operating in Africa. Over $40 billion extracted annually. Not loans. Not aid. Just extraction. He tapped the bottom of the page. And this figure here, less than 5%, is returned in profit sharing to African nations. Then, folding the paper back into his pocket, he turned to Vance. So if money equals control, perhaps we should ask whose leash we're really on. The crowd shifted. Eyes widened. Mouths opened. Even the moderator leaned back. Speechless. Vance tried to regroup. You still haven't. I did answer. Trayoré cut in. But let me ask you, Senator, if China funds 10 hospitals, and your firms extract 10 billion, who's really buying power? The room fell quiet again. But not heavy. Charged. Clips were already flooding social media. Trayoré didn't just survive the trap. He flipped the entire narrative on live television. In that moment, he wasn't just debating a senator. He was speaking to the entire world, and the world was listening. The cameras were still rolling. But no one in the studio spoke. Not the moderator. Not Vance. Not even the audience. Trayoré's words had detonated like truth, wrapped in TNT. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't point fingers. But his silence carried weight. And his logic hit like artillery. The internet, already on fire. The quote, so if money equals control, ask who's really on the leash, was trending in 4 languages within 10 minutes. Senator Vance straightened in his seat, trying to salvage control. Look, he began, his voice straining to sound composed. I respect your passion, but passion doesn't build systems. It doesn't keep peace. It doesn't hold order. Trayoré raised his hand. Small, measured, commanding. The room went dead silent. You speak of order, he said, but your order was built on the silence of others. He turned, his eyes scanning the crowd past politicians, past cameras, speaking not to the room, but to the millions watching. For decades, we were silent. We let the mines be stripped, the oil siphoned, the children starve while foreign aid lectured us on responsibility. He looked back at Vance. Calm. Centered. I will not be silent anymore. The moderator leaned forward, clearly rattled. President Trayoré, what exactly do you want from this new system you speak of? He didn't miss a beat. Not charity. Not lectures. Just respect. He paused, then added, the right to sit at the table without being told to be grateful for crumbs. The right to own the future we build. This time, the applause wasn't polite. It was raw. Visceral. Vance leaned back, visibly flustered. Respect is earned. Mr. President, Trayoré turned no hesitation. And yet you demand it, while denying ours. The blow landed hard. Even the moderator sat speechless. Flipping pages. Unsure how to transition. Social media was surging. Not with outrage, with awakening. Hashtags flooded timelines. Number, Trayoré truth. Number, we choose dignity. Number, new voices rising. And somewhere inside Capitol Hill, Vance's team watched the numbers, likes, shares, headlines. They realized what Vance hadn't. This wasn't just a debate anymore. It was a shift in global consciousness. And at the center of it all stood one man, not shouting, not shaking, but simply refusing to shrink. The debate was over, but the silence it left behind deafening. Inside the CNN studio, no one spoke for several long seconds. Even the cameras seemed to pause, as if the lens itself needed a breath. Trayoré hadn't shouted. He hadn't begged. He'd simply told the truth and let the silence do the rest. Senator Vance tried to recover. We need to remind the world who sets the terms of global leadership, he muttered backstage to his aides. But by the time the words left his lips, it was already too late. Trayoré had hijacked the narrative. Not with money, not with military, but with clarity. By morning, news outlets across the globe carried one name in their headlines: Trayoré, the African who shook the system. A new voice just redefined diplomacy. Geneva didn't end the debate. It began it. In Washington, Vance's team scrambled. He held emergency meetings, press interviews, even floated a legislative package, the Global Compliance Initiative, designed to punish nations that worked with destabilizing actors. At the top of the list, Burkina Faso. But something unexpected happened. Backlash. American students began protesting, calling the bill a new form of colonialism. Number, we choose dignity, trended again. Even rival lawmakers questioned Vance's motives. Senator Vance isn't confronting chaos. One of them said, he's resisting change. Meanwhile, Trayoré didn't celebrate. He didn't tweet. He didn't gloat. He moved. Within days, he called for a new economic summit, to be held not in Paris, not in Washington, but in Lomé, Togo. The invite list: Latin America, Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe. 23 nations that had long been told their place and were tired of being told anything. When the summit opened, Trayoré greeted each leader personally. No teleprompters, no fanfare, just firm handshakes and firmer resolve. His opening speech was short, but it thundered across the room. If the world order cannot include us with dignity, he said, then it is not an order. It is a cage. And we are here to break it. Applause roared. Not polite. Not planned. Real. And just like that, the ground began to shift. The old world had talked, but Trayoré had listened. He moved, he built, and in doing so, he turned one debate into a global aftershock. A month later, the world turned its gaze back to Geneva. The Global Leadership Forum, once a symbol of unity, now felt like a last stand for the old guard. Marble floors, glass walls, velvet seating, and tension thick enough to cut with a knife. The guest list read like a who's who of global power. CEOs, presidents, ministers, media giants, and front and center Senator J.D. Vance. Fresh off a media tour, branding Trayoré, a puppet of anti-Western chaos. But Trayoré, he accepted the challenge. No entourage. No spin team. Just purpose. Vance spoke first. He was polished. Precise. Practiced. We cannot let emotional revolutionaries undermine centuries of institutional wisdom. He said, the world works because we have rules. And rules require order. Polite applause followed. But thin. Hollow. Then, Trayoré took the stage. No papers. No notches. He looked around, not at the flags. Not at the lights, but at the faces. You speak of rules. He began. Voice calm. But who wrote them? He let the question hang. You speak of order. But in that order, who gets to stand and who's told to kneel? The room stiffened. For years, he continued, walking slowly across the stage. Africa has been told what to do, what to fix, what to be. He turned, voice rising, not in anger, but in truth, and now you are terrified. Not because Africa has changed, but because Africa is speaking. Gasps. Cameras flashed. Vance smirked from his seat. You're romanticizing rebellion. He called out, that's not leadership. Trayoré didn't miss a beat. No. I'm revealing your illusion. He stepped forward. Voice clear. Leadership isn't protecting a table you built. It's having the courage to flip it when it's rotten. The room erupted. The moderator froze, unsure whether to move on or just let the moment breathe. But Trayoré wasn't finished. I do not reject order. He said, I reject hypocrisy. I reject empires pretending to be teachers. I reject lectures disguised as aid. I reject systems that sell security while breeding instability. Now the applause wasn't just loud. It was global. Standing. Unscripted. Thunderous. Backstage. A BBC reporter whispered into her mic. This wasn't just a debate. This was a shift in gravity. Because in that moment, something became clear. The old world still had microphones, but the new world had the room. The forum ended, but the echo didn't. Within hours, clips of Trayoré's speech dominated every platform. Who wrote the rules I reject? Hypocrisy. Leadership means flipping the table. Each phrase sliced through headlines like a blade. Each clip felt like a tremor shaking the pillars of global power. In Washington, Senator Vance sat stone-faced across from his staff. He hijacked the moment. One aide whispered, "No." Vance said coldly. He hijacked the audience. He scrambled for control press appearances, op-eds, interviews. He's emotional. Vance insisted to a morning show host. He's not strategic. But the host didn't flinch. "Senator," she said quietly, "emotions don't get standing ovations in Geneva. Truth does." Across Europe, policy analysts worked overtime. Reports piled in youth movements, citing Trayoré in Spain. Student rallies in Germany, holding signs that read, "Flip the table youths leaders in Latin America." Re-evaluating decades-old trade agreements, the media called it a ripple effect. But it wasn't a ripple. It was a rift. And Trayoré didn't tweet. He didn't hold press conferences. He didn't perform. He acted. In Ouagadougou, he froze all new mining contracts, pending a full audit. He initiated a global legal challenge against colonial-era resource agreements. He announced the first ever Sovereignty Forum, inviting non-aligned nations from every corner of the globe, a gathering not to beg, but to build. While analysts speculated, Trayoré stood on a rooftop in eastern Burkina Faso, not at a podium, but beside children, not with security behind him, with future in front of him. A general turned to him. "They expected you to fall after Geneva," he said. "Instead, you stood taller." Trayoré smiled faintly, watching the children read from donated books. "That's the thing about their rules," he said. "They only work if we believe in them." He looked toward the horizon, where hills rolled untouched, and we stopped believing. They told him he didn't belong. He proved the room was too small. They told him the system was sacred. He didn't burn it down. He simply stepped outside and built something no one could ignore, because some leaders follow the rules, but the rare ones, they rewrite them.